So the four words we just talked about are lo, las, los, and las. So let's just fill them in here. So we have lo, la, los, and las. Just in case, just so we make sure we know what these mean in English, lo and la can mean it. Lo could also mean him if you're referring to people, and la could mean her if you're referring to people. Los and las always mean them, whether you're referring to people or things. So let's look at some examples, starting with some pretty simple examples, and then getting a little more complicated. So I open the door. So this is actually one of the harder things we're going to do before the end of the year here because it really requires you to bring together a lot of things we've talked about in the second semester. First of all, to do a translation like this, you have to remember how to say open, which is abrir. So that's abrir. But now we don't just say to open, we say I open. So we have to take off the IR and add O. So that's I open. And now we have to put the word it. So that means we have to figure out the door. Is that a masculine word where we'd use lo or la? And the word for door is la puerta. Since it's feminine, we know we're going to use la. Now we have to decide where to put it. And as we talked about, unless there's more than one part to the verb, or the verbal phrase technically, we have to put it before. So it becomes la abro. Down here, the students study them, referring to the verbs. So los estudiantes are the students. Then we hopefully know that estudiar is to study, but again, we don't just put estudiar in there. We have to put the right ending on it. Since it's the students, or they, we use estudian. The verbs, again, is los verbos. Since it's los verbos, we need to use los. Now, I just realized I made a mistake in the chart up there. This should actually be las. Let's fix that. Sorry about that, because it's feminine. So los estudiantes, los estudian, masculine, plural. That's what the verbs are. So those are pretty what we call simple sentences, actually. Now let's look at some more complex sentences. We like to eat it, referring to the cake. So we like would be nos gusta. To eat is comer. And now we have to remember how to say the cake, which is el pastel. And although we usually just take the word that's right in front of it, like la casa, uh, las amigas, los bolígrafos, whatever it may be, with el it actually becomes lo. So it's not nos gusta comer el, it's nos gusta comer lo. And again, I'm putting it at the end because there's more than one part to the verbal phrase. So it's nos gusta comer lo. So one way to think about this is anytime a verb ends with er, or ir, we can always put the lo, la, los, or las in the end. Otherwise, it can go in front. One other example, you feel like using it, the computer. So say you feel like doing something, that's tener ganas de. Since it's you feel like doing something, it's tienes ganas de. And then what you feel like doing, using the computer. So it's usar la computadora. Since we're taking out the computer and putting in it, and it's la computadora, we use la. Again, since we have more than one part to the verbal phrase and we have a word that ends with ar, ir, we can add the la right on the end. He has to eat them, the vegetables. So we could start with tiene, since it's he has to do this. Since it's something he has to do, tiene que. We saw this word just above, comer. Now this time, it kind of depends on what word you choose for vegetables. Let's just use los vegetales. Since I said los vegetales, we're going to use los. We have a word that ends with er, so we can add it right on the end. Two more examples, again related to the quiz we did on Tuesday. You all just set the table. So to just have done something, acabar de, let me just fix this font here so I'll get off that. So it's not acabar, since it's you all, we can use acaban, de, and then to set the table is the same as to put the table. So the word to put is poner, and table is la mesa. Since it's la mesa, we use la, we put it right at the end. It's all one word there, the end of poner, acaban de ponerla. Last example on this page, they are going to buy them, referring to the pens. So going to do something, we start with the form of ir, which is van in this case for they are going. To buy is comprar. So now we're talking about the pens, and this does depend on what word you choose to use for pens, and whether it's los or las. Let's assume we're using los bolígrafos. Since it's los bolígrafos, it would be los. Now, if I had chosen las plumas for pens, I'd obviously change that to las. It just depends whatever word it was used in the context. Since we don't know, it can be really either one. Okay? So again, just to review, we generally put the lo, la, los, or las before the verb, the action word. If there's more than one part to that verb or the verbal phrase, it can come at the end, and we put it right after the word that ends with ar, er, ir. There's one other time we can put it at the end, and that's if you have a verb, or actually it's really actually called a participle, that ends with ando or endo. And those are always going to be things people are doing right now. For example, she is watching TV right now, or she is watching it right now. So remember that for to say someone is doing something right now, we need a form of a star. Now we don't use a star, we have to change it to depending on who is doing that action. So since it's she, it would be está, and then mirar la televisión is to watch TV. Now since she's doing it right now, we change the ending to está mirando, and then la televisión, it becomes la. Now there's one other thing we have to add to this last word here, and that's an accent mark. The reason we have to add an accent mark is for pronunciation purposes. The ando or endo part indicate that that person is doing something right now. So we want to make sure that comes through when we say this. So if we didn't have the accent mark, this would be pronounced está mirandola. And you can't really hear the ando or endo part. So we add an accent mark so people, when they say this, stress that part of the word. Está mirándola. You can really hear the ando, or if it were endo, you would hear that too. So whenever you add something onto a word that ends with ando or endo, you just have to remember to add the accent mark. Now we talked about whenever a word ends with ando or endo, or if it ends with er, ar, or ir, you can add it on the end. In some cases, you can put it before too. Now, I'm not trying to confuse you, but sometimes you'll see it before. And in these four cases, you have the choice. You can either put it at the end, after ar, er, ir, ando, endo, or you can put it before the first verb. So, for example, you are playing it, the guitar, something you're doing right now. So, estás tocando, now referring to the guitar, which is la guitarra. So we could add it right on the end if we wanted. Estás tocándola, like we did above with the television. Or we could actually add it before. There are two choices. There's no difference between them, and you can use whichever one you want. Just a reminder, the format of the quiz, you'll be answering questions like, are you playing the guitar right now? ¿Está usted tocando la guitarra ahora? And then you'd say, probably, no. You could either say la estoy tocando or no estoy tocándola. So that's why it doesn't matter. I just want to show you that there are multiple possibilities here. Use whichever one is easier for you. A couple other examples where we can also put it before if we want. I have to study it, referring to Spanish. So tengo que estudiar, and now it's español, and that's a masculine word, el español, so we know it's going to be lo. Now I certainly could put it right there, but I also have the possibility of putting it out front here. Lo tengo que estudiar. You all just did it, referring to the homework. So you all is acaban de hacer. You all just did. We're talking about la tarea, so I could put la right there if I wanted. Or I also have the option of putting it out front in front of acaban. La acaban de hacer. And notice when I say those words, they all kind of blend together. And that's why it sometimes seems to people who are unfamiliar with Spanish, or any other language for that matter, that they talk fast, because they just blend the sounds together. We do the same thing in English. It sounds really weird if I talk, or excuse me, speak each word individually, because no one talks like this unless you're a computer. And so we just blend the words together naturally. Same thing happens in Spanish. La acaban de hacer. A couple more. We are going to share it. This is vamos a compartir lo. That's one possibility, referring to el libro. I kind of went pretty fast there, sorry. Vamos is we are going. A compartir is to share. The book is el libro, so we put lo. Now I can put it at the end like I just did, or with this one, I actually have the option of putting it at the beginning too. Lo vamos a compartir. So with these four constructions, doing something right now, have to do something, just did something, going to do something, you can either put it at the beginning or at the end, either one. With the last two, as you can see here, it says mucho ojo. That's because with these constructions, you only can put it after. Those are anytime they have the word like. So, for example, you see they like to prepare it. He feels like listening to it, referring to music. We cannot put it before. They always, the lo, la, los, las part has to come at the end. So, for example, they like to prepare dinner. Les gusta preparar, that's they like to prepare. Dinner is la cena. So the question is, can you put it out front here? Could you say, la les gusta preparar? And the answer is a resounding no. You have to put it at the end. And the reason is just simple. It would get confusing. People wouldn't know what you're talking about. La les gusta just sounds weird. No one says that. And because they have that lace there, it just would get confused in there. So it makes sense to put it at the end. A similar thing here. He feels like listening. So if he feels like listening, is tiene ganas de escuchar. Now, to or it, music is la música. So again, you might think it's not quite as confusing as la excusa, so maybe we could put it up front, but there are just so many parts to this verbal phrase that because there's so many parts, we just have to put it at the end. So it's clear that we're referring to music and it goes with escuchar and it doesn't get confused in there with ganas and stuff like that. So these two, you always have to put the lo, la, los at the end. So again, just to recap, the 4 words you're going to have to memorize for the quiz are lo, la, los, las, and you'll have to know how to use them in sentences much like you saw here. They always come before the verb unless you have a verb that ends with ar, er, ir, or ando, endo. Sometimes you have the option to put it before or after, but with these last two that involve the word like, you only can put it at the end.